Hey, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We have another special episode for you today. Over the past few months, we have, on about a monthly basis, recorded a live Q&A where we answer questions that you, as the audience, the listener, if you're watching on YouTube, questions that you submitted to us. Specific questions about a topic that's important to music school owners, specific challenges that people in the audience are experiencing right now. And so we have this very long list of questions that Nate and I are just going to plow through as quickly as we can today, as well as get feedback from those who are here live with us right now. You obviously can't tell from the video feed, but we have a number of people in the live audience. And even over the past couple live sessions that we've done with you and me, Nate, we've had people even come on camera, so to speak, and ask their question live here. And that could happen again today. But yeah, I'm excited to jump into these questions. Nate, how you feeling?
I'm feeling aces. And one of the things I love about this format, Daniel, is that they're real questions from real studio owners that have real problems today. And it's just really feels like we're doing the right thing if we're helping someone right now with an issue, overcoming that hurdle. So
I agree.
I say we dive in because last I counted, we have at least 18 questions that we need to get through.
I think we're just going to end up paying it forward every single time because some of the questions were for the last live, which was about a month ago. And anyway, we'll see what happens. So let's just jump to the first one. It's kind of a short one, and I have a strong opinion about this one. So Jan asked, I'm starting to post in many groups, and in context, he's talking about Facebook groups. So starting to post to get more students for the studio. Would you include an offer? And he says in parentheses, I have a landing page on every post. Thank you. Okay, so I have a strong opinion about this, and I think we can deal with this one really, really fast. 100%. We do not go on social media to, I guess there's a lot of reasons one could go on social media, but if you are going on social media for business purposes, every post, every piece of content should have some sort of call to action on it. And while I'm not going to recommend that every post have a hard pitch in it for your services, there should be something that leads the viewer to go deeper. For instance, let's say you post a video of a student performance. The kind of thing that you could post as a call to action there would be, let's start on the light end of things. Leave a like, leave a comment. Let this student know how much you enjoyed their song. That is a call to action. That's asking them to show a little bit more engagement, a little more involvement. And if they if they do that, they will likely, because of the algorithm, see more of your posts in the future. So asking for that light engagement, that light call to action is helpful. On the other end of the spectrum, there could be a full out pitch in a post. I don't recommend doing it that often. There could be something in the middle, which is more like, hey, reach out for a free trial lesson. You could have a link in a pinned comment or in the post itself, in the text of the post itself, to a landing page where you have a much more robust description of the services that your school or studio offers. But irrespective of what the actual call to action is, there should be one. And I think that's all I have to say on that. Nate, do you have any follow-up, or should we jump to the next thing?
No, I love that. I like how you framed it. It's not that we're selling something every time. We're just asking for engagement.
Yeah.
Call to action, fancy marketing phrase for engage with us, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And honestly, I first became kind of aware of this concept over a decade ago when Gary Vaynerchuk released his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook.
Right.
Interesting title, but the title points towards this idea of you don't want to, he's using boxing metaphor, you don't want to throw a right hook in every post. You're not hard pitching someone in every post. You jab, you jab, you jab. You deliver value, 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 value. And then every once in a while, you roll out this idea of, or you roll out, the product or the service or whatever. But it's not something you do every single time. And I think that book was actually a watershed moment in digital marketing in 2013 when he released it. Because up to that point, there were a lot of brands that had no idea how to use social media. And doubly so for small businesses. And that book changed the conversation.
I don't, yeah, that book sat by my bed for like months collecting dust. And then eventually I was like, okay, dude, you need to actually read this.
Mm.
But but one of the things I love about uh, this question is because it gets at a core principle that we share often, Daniel, which is if all you're ever doing is selling, it means that you don't really have a rich story to tell,
Mm.
right? And if you don't really have a rich story to tell, it means you haven't really sat down and thought about your purpose or your values or what success looks like for a student of yours 10 years from now. And if you haven't really sat down to think about that, then it means you need to really ponder what your calendar looks like over the next 30 days, right? Because no matter how hard you sell, there's somebody out there who can sell better. I promise you, right? But no matter how hard someone tries to compete with your narrative, i.e., your purpose and values, there's nobody that can.
Yeah.
There's not one person who can compete with your rich story and your narrative. And one of the things I love about Gary Vee is that I remember I was at a conference and he was the keynote, and he got up there and it was a fairly conservative crowd, and he started just being Gary Vee. And next thing you know, he's swearing and doing the thing he's doing because that's the way he operates. And he apologized briefly, and he's like, "This is just who I am. If this is uncomfortable for you, then I apologize, but this is what you're getting. You're just getting me."
Yeah.
And he just did him. So anyways, I like how you framed it, Daniel, because the jab is all about your story and is all about keeping it rich and keeping it deep, not wide.
All right. This next one, Nate, is a little bit interesting. There's a little bit of a story here, and I thought, I don't know, maybe this is a little too maybe a little too detailed to be helpful, but as I read the second paragraph, I thought I bet Nate will have a lot to say about that. So I'm going to read the story, and then Nate, I want you to start it on this one.
Okay, dig it.
Here we go. So Dan writes, "I'm having a challenge with finding a proper commercial location to offer group piano classes. I would like a home base since my schedule is filling up as a travel teacher. There's a potential space locally here in New Jersey that's $500 per month located in a mall that connected to a luxury high-rise and has just about enough room for the class size I want to teach. The current business that occupies the space is leaving in May." Here's where it gets interesting. "However, the AC was not working when I took measurements of the room. There was a leak in the hallway drop ceiling of the mall area that was taped off. I was also told by a business who occupied that space previously that he decided to move to a different spot in the mall because the space I was looking at flooded, which is why he left. While this person seemed off, I'm not sure how to trust what he says. Should I investigate further and talk to the other businesses? Is this a red flag? The mall and luxury condos are very nice, but maybe it's too good to be true." And honestly, knowing New Jersey and knowing the price for that space, like I can see why he's tempted, why it seems too good to be true. So Nate, with your experience in the greater Manhattan area with real estate, all your experiences with spaces, good and bad, and then just hearing this, what does your spider sense tingle when you hear this? Like, what are you thinking?
Well, what's interesting is, first of all, I'm literally coaching a client right now who wanted to expand to a commercial space. In his case, he has a beautiful home studio that he teaches out of. But he's like, "I've outgrown the home studio, and I also want to get it out of my home." Like the way they've designed it, that he still has people waiting in his kitchen, pre-lesson, and it's too much for his partner, and we all understand that. But there's a few things I read in here separate from, cost per square foot, New York versus elsewhere, New Jersey, et cetera. And I sort of, whenever I hear these stories, I always I try to find the foundational question here. Like, what's the actual opportunity for this person asking the question? And the first thing I hear is they say, "I'd like a home base since my schedule is filling up as a travel teacher." Well, okay, the very first opportunity is you're saying, whoa. He's saying, "I want to actually offer an entirely new business model," which is convincing others to come to him. Whereas his entire business, as I understand it, is in home, like house calls. So one of the things he's selling already is convenience, which is worth an awful lot to a parent. And so I would actually pause before I even went to the right location to say, is this the right next opportunity for him? Is it actually that he should open up a commercial location? In fact, if I were going to do, and we've talked a ton about this, Daniel, if I were going to open up a brand new, if I were going to like new business bucket, do a new business model, i.e. ask customers to come to me rather than me come to them, I would actually test that hypothesis first with something really cheap and easy. Like I'm now, like he said, I think he mentioned for a second, is it better to just go to like I know somebody else mentioned this, but is it better to just go to like rent a church basement once a week? Hell yeah, it is. Start by going small, testing your hypothesis and your business model. If I were to open up a group piano class, using something like Piano Express in the basement of a church once a week, could I actually get 30 families to show up over the next 12 months? There you go. Test your business proposition first. Now, if there's obviously other really rich questions in here, is $500 per month located in a mall? Is that a good deal? That's too deep a question to answer. We'd obviously have to know exactly the zip code they're in. We'd have to find comps of other rentals. There's all kinds of things that we can do and we can research to know what the actual price per square foot is. But I'll tell you what I did in Brooklyn, because I'm on my third location here. I'm sitting in Studio 9 now at the factory. But there's a whole lot of pounding the pavement at first, where you see a whole lot of spaces and you gauge what your cost per square foot is within the market that you want to work. And by within the market we want to work, it's the market that we already know, right, Daniel? It's not like this dude goes 30 miles away to a strip mall. He's working within a 5 to 10 square mile radius if you're in the burbs, right? In Brooklyn, it's like a 10 to 20 square block radius, right? But it's the same as a mile. A block is a mile, basically, in the big city versus the suburbs. So last thing I want to point out here with this is that I highlighted the word, should I investigate further and talk to other businesses? Is this a red flag? And he's just referencing the AC. I want to just point out something that's probably obvious to those that are listening that are, let's say, further along in life, i.e. maybe you're in your mid stage like myself. Things like AC not working don't freak us out anymore. Because we've already, there's been so many, the AC doesn't work by the time you're 54 that you're just like, oh, AC doesn't work. Next question is, what does it cost to repair the AC? That's all there is there, right? However, so I just want to point that out, all we're looking for is what's the next best question whenever we do a walkthrough with somebody. All we want is to just like fill up our Evernote, right, Daniel, with good questions to ask, and then decide, is it worth my time and effort to get answers to these questions? That's basically all we're ever doing. Because yes, your boiler is definitely going to break. That dishwasher is going to go out right on the day before Thanksgiving, because that's how it works, So anyways, last thing I'll say is just, and then I think we can move on from this one. And hopefully my answers are somewhat beneficial to them. But because, of course, we can't answer, yes, you should do this, or no, you shouldn't. All we can do is try to help them with more questions to ask that are maybe a little bit better than the initial ones they were inspired to ask. He says, should I investigate further? I always ask myself the following question. Do I have enough information to make a good data-driven choice and a good intuitive choice, right? So you need both your intuition to say, yeah, I got enough information to make a choice, whether it takes the space or not. And have I asked enough questions, i.e., do the mechanicals work? How much is it going to cost to, repaint the joint, fix it up? How much is it going to cost to get this thing open? How many years is it going to take me to pay back the debt to get the thing open? All these things. If you don't feel like you have enough of those questions and you don't have enough to intuit your next action, then yeah, you absolutely should investigate further. That's how I deal with those. So, Daniel, I'm going to stop there because it's a deep question. And of course, this listener can write us again and we can talk further.
Well, you said something there that I just want to briefly pause on. One of the coaches I worked with, the main one that I worked with for a long time, he said something to me once. He said, a good coach will answer your questions. A truly exceptional coach will help you live into better questions, live into bigger questions. And you referenced that. And I would just say that, on the podcast, we quote unquote give away a lot of information. I've heard people say that, oh, you give away so much good information. That's great. There are no mysteries left in business. New business books are printed every day. And I'm sure the people writing those are smarter than both Nate and I put together. That isn't
Gary
the point.
V. Gary V
there you
is
go.
definitely smarter.
Certainly
than
much more successful. The point is that it's not so much the information layer, and I think people get caught up on that. It's the contact with someone who can look behind the question and help you ask better questions of yourself. And so often I see people ask questions or they'll send us an email. Oh, thank you so much. This episode just hit the spot for me. And that's great. And we're happy that happens. Where I see real transformation happening is when people reach out to us and want to go a bit deeper with us or a lot deeper with us and truly transformational things happen. And so, if you hear this episode or watching this on YouTube at some point in the future and you're ready to go deeper like that, just reach out, Daniel@GregoryMusicStudio.com, or just fill out our contact form on the site, and I can connect you with Nate and connect you with me, and we can look into the business, look into your business, and go deeper than just the surface level of these questions.
Daniel, can I share one story around that last? Before
Sure.
answering that last question, I shared that I was working with someone right now, and I've known this person a long time, has an amazing drum school, and actually one of the very first pieces of homework we did when they reached out and they were asking about this commercial space is we went into writing his money story. And it was fascinating. He ended up sending me an 8-page document on his money story. And that alone raised a whole series of deeper questions for them around what they actually were trying to achieve over the next 5 years with their school, rather than the simple question of, dude, can you help me assess this commercial lease opportunity?
Yeah.
So that's to your point. It was very moving, super moving to read for me, and just to see what's baked in there. So, okay.
What we said is submit a question or submit a challenge you have. This is formatted as a challenge, not as a question. So Maria said her challenge is she's training inexperienced teachers in the group structure as well as experienced teachers who are just used to traditional private lessons. So what I'm reading that is the challenge is, I guess, getting teachers to perform well or to teach well. Would you say that's correct, Maria? You're going to mute if you want to modify this or elaborate more.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure can. You sound great.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank you, Daniel, for so many years of help. You have no idea how often I want to get the wristband that says WWDS. What would Daniel say? I literally, you talk about the test of a truly awesome coach. And I think all these years later, 8 years now, how long has it been? When I am still looking back and seeing wisdom, like things that I couldn't even grasp that you were saying back then, that I've evolved so much that I'm like, Daniel told me that 8 years ago, I just want to thank you so much.
Sure.
First of all. Secondly, my issue is I cannot find teachers. So I have been forced to hire teachers, do everything you have said not to do in a way, like in terms of hiring. Like your podcasts and videos have been extremely helpful. I have done everything I possibly can. I've spoken to schools, colleges, universities, gone online, done the Indeed, the LinkedIn, this, everything I possibly do, networking. And I'm just having a really difficult time finding teachers, as is everyone else around here too. Everybody is looking for teachers. Every music school around here. It's not just me.
Yeah.
It's schools that have, like, New Windsor Academy of Music is one of, I wouldn't call them my competitor because I'm just piano. They are everything.
Sure.
They have thousands of kids. They have to turn people away because they can't find teachers. Their teachers, a lot of turnaround. So it is, the first issue that I'm having is that I'm hiring people I would not normally hire. I have had to do the best I can. So these teachers are out of school, just out of school. They do have a music degree. They play piano. It is not their major instrument. The one I'm trying to train right now, her major instrument is voice. Voice majors often have good experience with piano, so I will say that's a plus. They're required to take a lot of piano. And I've even narrowed it down, like, for her, so that it will only be 4 students in a group. Like, I could take more than that, but for her groups, it will be that. And I have systems in place, where there's, I get her ready, systems to get her ready with a curriculum that I use, like Piano Adventures or whatever else I'm using. So then there's a system to get them, even just of the observations, videos I've made so they can observe on their own. There's just a bunch of different systems, observations live, the studio. And it's going to take the time it's going to take, and I have to get them ready by fall. And I'm wondering if there's anything else I can be doing, because I'm nervous. I'm not sure they're going to be ready by the fall.
Okay. Yes, there's a lot here. So, Nate, I know you've probably got a lot to say. I will say, for context, she's in Westchester, just so you know. That's the first thing.
Oh, actually, I'm not even in Westchester.
I know. I looked it up. I saw.
I'm
I
in
know
the
that.
Hudson Valley.
Yeah.
So I'm in Highland, New York. So, which is way further up, like probably like another almost 2 hours north of Westchester.
Right. Okay.
I'm right next to Vassar. Like, I'm like 10 minutes away from Vassar College, Marist College, SUNY New Paltz. Which is SUNY New Paltz is where I get teachers, or I try to, because they're more local. So, yeah.
So, Nate, do you want to start with, let's start with the hiring difficulties things, potentially, if that's where you want to go. I have a lot to say about the prepping for group, but you go first.
I want you to define what failure looks like in the fall. Maria, in like one sentence, what does failure look like if you don't get this right?
Failure to me is hearing from a lot of parents. When
right. And what will they say? Failure. What will they say? Exactly. In one sentence, what's the most common thing you hear?
My child's not getting enough new material coming home. It's a combination of that, or my child came home. These are things that I've heard in the past when I've hired teachers who I've had to let. My child said they were sitting at the keyboard for, 40 minutes before anybody came over to them.
Okay, great. Stop right there. So not enough new material at a ready rate. Number 2, not enough one-on-one attention in a group setting.
Right.
Okay. Now, the first piece of homework for you when you get off the podcast is to come up with 3 other things that parents say that you're like, I'm anticipating this. Okay. And then I'm gonna go back, because I know Daniel could speak for hours on how to prep well for a group lesson. And it's really, really good to listen to him and to listen to Greg talk about it. It's amazing. It's always inspiring to me. However, in my area of expertise at the factory, it's how to take someone who may not have the level of experience. Nobody's going to have the level of experience of you and me. It's not happening. We can't afford them. It's not a good business model to hire Nate to work at your school. You know what I mean? So instead,
Daniel once said to me, I don't know if you remember saying this to me years ago, Maria, if you want you, then don't grow bigger. You actually said that to me, Daniel. I don't know if you remember saying that.
I dig it.
Just go with you,
Then just go with you. Exactly, and maximize you. Okay, but that's a different question altogether. So the very first thing that we do at the factory is we ask ourselves, how do we know when we're failing with training? Right? And so that's that list of 5 bullets. Because one thing we want to be very careful with is that you're already obviously working your ass off to try to figure out how to train well, right? You've made videos, you've created, like, you've given her this new hire a 3-month run to the fall, you've, et cetera. You're doing lots of good things. Now what we need to do is we need to refine our tactics to focus on 3 to 5 areas that we're going to ensure don't break in the fall. So for example, I'll just give you a very real example at the factory. One of our main pain points is parents looking into a mini keys classroom and saying it looks like they're just playing around. Are they actually learning anything? And we have windows. We want them to look in, right? So one of our main areas of training is in twofold. Number one, classroom management. Every month, we focus on training the classroom management. How do you actually inspire a 4 or a 5-year-old to want to stay on their poly spot long enough to be able to do an activity that might flex their brain in some way, right? Number 2, we're always training to the curriculum, constantly training to the games and to the songwriting curriculum and to what's level appropriate for a 4 and 5-year-old. And we're just, those things, Maria, are like rinse and repeat. They just happen over and over and over. Why? Because one of our main pain points is a parent looks at a mini keys curriculum and says, it looks like the kids are just playing around. And number 2, can you explain what they're learning? Right? Okay. Yeah. You have different pain points in a group piano class, and you've already identified 2 of them. So the very first thing I would focus on for you is how to take your great intuition, which is already working well in terms of knowing that you need to train in a very focused and effective way, and then decide exactly what you're going to train to, right? Because honestly, like the curriculum nuances, i.e., the books you're using or whatever, are probably not at all going to be where you pay attention. It's probably going to be things like every 5 minutes when this timer goes off, you shift to a new student. Basic things like that. You're just going to have to think different. Daniel, I'm going to go back to you because that's my first intuition coming out of it.
Yeah. This one is more general. And I would say that if you had a student, and I'm going to speak very generally here, if there was a student that you had that was more advanced and you had 2 teachers that could teach that student, and I'm not talking in the context of a group, this is more of an abstract idea. And you had one teacher who'd been teaching for 20 years, and you had one teacher that was just out of grad school, and this student is trying to learn, a fairly difficult Chopin waltz or, a Bartok piece that was really challenging rhythmically. You're probably going to put that student with that second or the more advanced teacher. They just have the experience to handle that student, and you'd probably assign the teacher who is just out of grad school to students that are earlier in their journey, just so that teacher has time to develop their confidence, their communication abilities, et cetera, et cetera. The point I'm making here is that you have to look at the difficulty level that you're putting a teacher into. And what I know about your group system, Maria, and this is a little unfair because I do know you a lot better than some of the other folks who had submitted questions, is just that the group system that you're using is a more challenging way of teaching. It requires people to be much more on their toes. It requires people to have really, really strong communication skills, requires, as a teacher, a fair amount of confidence, the ability to direct kids, classroom control ability, like all these sorts of things. And so what I would say is that the trade-off is that there's a lot more flexibility in your system, but because of that, you need teachers that are much more capable. And so, and I'm saying this as a general guideline because, again, since I know your story a little bit better and I know what you've looked into in the past, if that's the case, if what you have to work with is someone who needs more time to season, then what's probably better is to have a teacher like that teach in a group system that's much more defined, that's much more structured. Because the group system you're using is a lot more unstructured, and that might be why you're running into some of the training issues. And I just know that because I've seen hundreds of studios use more of a unstructured, multi-level, more free-form, intuitive way of teaching. That's very hard for someone who maybe is primarily voice, or that's harder for someone who's just out of college or grad school. They're in their early to mid 20s. That's just going to be harder. Whereas, and just not to put too fine a point on it, but in our Piano Express studio in Virginia, we've mostly hired early to mid 20-year-olds because the curriculum is so structured that our training time to the time that they're ready to be in the classroom is 4 weeks or less. And they're getting great success in their classes that quickly. And so just as you were outlining what the challenge was, I couldn't help but think of that because there's such a juxtaposition between the two outcomes. And I've had teachers who've been teaching 10, 15 years who've used a more unstructured multi-level approach, a little bit more of a free-form approach where there isn't a set plan or a set curriculum for the hour and they have multiple students demanding their attention at the same time. I've seen teachers who've taught 10, 15 years take some time to get used to it. It took me time to get used to it. And so to throw someone new who piano isn't their first instrument into that, well, you kind of shouldn't expect to be surprised if that's the outcome. And so again, in solving the problem here, hard choices have to be made for you specifically, Maria. But then for those who are listening, what I would just say is consider the greater principles here that I'm talking about, more than just Maria's specific group challenge that we're talking about, but just think about this in terms of how you're training your staff across the board. Maybe you don't even teach group lessons, but you can take the principle of what I'm talking about and apply it across a wide array of challenges. So I think that's my thought, at least on the training component of it.
Daniel, let me add to that.
Sure.
I love what you said. It's like we see this all the time at the factory. Our Songwriter's Journey curriculum, which is predominantly a private lesson one, though some schools have used it for group, that seems to train really efficiently, like what you're talking about, Daniel. And it's because it's just very specific and leveled. Yeah. It's like Piano Express does such a great job of being like, this is where we are, this is where you can go next, and that's beneficial to the teacher because the teacher's not guessing what she or he is going to lesson prep next.
Right.
I want to just put a caveat on what we're saying here, though.
Love it. I love the counterpoint always. Let's do the counterpoint.
The counterpoint is just to get back to some of the comments you made around, it's very, very, very normal for a new teacher to come in as a 22-year-old or 23-year-old and require a few years to learn how to communicate.
Sure.
That, to me, should be expected, right? It's very rare that we hire a teacher here who's just incredibly ease and flow in communicating with parents when they're fresh out of college. It takes them time. They still identify as a child. They're more identifying with their college and high school years than they are with the idea of being an adult.
Adulthood years, yeah.
I have two young adults as kids who are bouncing between the two. So I just wanted to put that caveat, and then I think we can move on from here. But that we have to be patient with some of the training, and then to Daniel's point, sometimes we just have to make hard choices on the actual curriculum or the system we're going to use to help solve one of our training issues.
Yeah.
I believe that that's a really important addition to this. And, it doesn't mean you have to adopt anything you've heard here, but it does mean it's worthy of a question.
Yeah.
So.
I haven't about
yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any last follow-up to anything we've said here, Maria? Any, maybe follow-up question or anything?
First of all, I want to say the Piano Express, it would solve all my problems. I know it would.
Hallelujah.
I'm terrible with technology. I don't enjoy it. And so that is my hesitation. One of my hesitations. And also that would be a big undertaking to get ready for that. And then also what Daniel said was spot on. I love the flexibility of the schedule that I have now. And what I'm doing has been working great because I've had teachers who've been here a while and I've been doing it. And it's a well-oiled machine, So but I will, but likely I have to think about changing curriculum, changing the group structure, not having it be so open, where I have 28 groups running and you can make up in every one of them. That's probably not going to work because I can't put the advanced kids with a new teacher. So, yeah.
Maria, can I do a reframe your I don't like technology comment?
Yes.
Okay. So let's frame it like this. What's the next opportunity for us? Is it spending the next 6 to 12 months tweaking our hiring system? Or is it spending the next 6 to 12 months bringing on someone who can handle our technology?
Oh, I think she could handle the technology perfectly.
So she's hired now to be she'll be your IT person at $20 an hour for 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so it isn't even, you don't have to answer the question. I'm just asking, I always ask myself, which issue do I want to address?
No, believe me, it is something I'm considering. How long does that, would I be able to be up and running by the fall?
Yeah.
Daniel's not answering this. I'll answer this. Yes, you will be up and running by the fall. Okay, we should go on to the next question.
All right.
Gotcha.
You guys can take this offline, but I love the, it was a great question.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Very cool. And I'll just also say Nate mentioned mini keys. There's also Big Music Games. That's yet another system that you can bring into the studio. The discerning studio owner or academy owner who's listening to this right now can bring these systems into their studio as well. And they have fantastic training. I'd also point that out. It's not just Piano Express. That's great training. Okay, so Nate, question from Katarina. Would you ever open a studio location near another music school? I live near LA for reference.
Well, we did a great episode. Remember the app we did on music schools opening up close to us? So sort of flipping. I can't remember which episode it was, but the bottom line is this, and this may come across as sort of like too 10,000 footy, but I'm just going to say it, which is there isn't actually competition for your studio. There's not another music school that's going to steal your students. There's just lack of clarity and focus on your part as to why families enroll with you and stay with you for a decade. So whenever we get questions like the first thing they ask is how much it costs, it means we're still focusing on our value proposition being around pricing. It means we're still focusing on our value proposition of being around the instrument. We teach piano, or our value proposition, in my case, I've been teaching for 30 years. Okay, but this is New York. There's so many people that have been teaching for 30 years in New York. It's not much of a value proposition, So it's so the short answer I would say to that is absolutely you can open up next to another music school, but you want to be very, very clear on when you're going to, watch this, refer your inquiries to that music school. Imagine being so clear on what you offer that when someone inquires and you're like, actually, you're not a good fit for my school, I'm going to send you over to this school down the block. When you feel comfortable like that, 100% open up next to them. But if you think that you're trying to hoard every lead that comes in and try to keep them from the music school that's down the block, it means we still have work to do on understanding very clearly why we are such a unique and special opportunity for a family. So if the question was, would you ever open a studio location near another music school? Absolutely, if I was clear that other music school served a different purpose than mine.
So Nate, we've got a lot more questions here. I think let's take a little bit of a pause. And I think with the number of questions we have, let's just roll right into recording another episode and we can release the rest of that in a separate episode at some point in the future. How's that sound?
Sounds great. We got tons of good ones.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.